Hey paper crafters, I'm Trisha Morris at Club Scrap with another really fun project for you to put together. This I'm calling the Maze Book in a Matchbox, and as you can see I have several samples here. The first one that I made was with Club Scrap's Gone Wild remix, and I started with some folding board. This is the hammered copper, and I also made one with the craft colored folding board. And what makes the folding board special is that it's really heavy. In fact, it was developed for the industry by a company that helps package perfume and other really high-end product packaging. So it's a wonderful product, and it's really easy to work with and so much fun. So that's the craft and the hammered copper on these two Gone Wild Maze books and a Matchbox. That's a mouthful. And then I also use the brushed stainless steel that we have with papers from the beautiful Noise collection released by Club Scrap. And these are fully embellished with all of the cut aparts that came right in the page kit. So you can make out of this instruction that I'm going to give you, you can actually make a total of 2 out of a pretty basic set of supplies. And then this too is done with the craft. And Karen made this one with the Coffee House collection from Club Scrap. So there's so much potential in these adorable little boxes. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you need to do is select the kit or the style that you're looking for and grab a copy of the instructions. So here it is, and it tells you exactly what you need to gather. So 2 12 by 12A, 2 12 by 12B, C, D, and a sheet of folding board. So I'm using papers for this particular one from the Vintage Americana collection. So for paper A, I just chose the gold and the red. So I'm going to make one gold book in the inside of my, that'll be the Maze Book paper, one in gold and one in red. And then for papers B, I chose one of each print that's in the collection. For paper C, this is going to become the tray. I chose this dark blue. And then paper D, which will make our little book covers, I'm using this really nice heavy duty manila color. So those are the papers I've chosen. And I think because of the earth tones here, I'm going to be using the craft colored folding board. And again, it comes in craft, black, brushed stainless steel. We have limited supplies of that. And then this hammered copper, also quite stunning. Remember that these two are coated, so when you score them, you have to score on the black side. And I'll talk more about scoring and preparing that folding board in a little bit. Now there's quite a bit of scoring and folding and trimming involved, and fair warning, there are also some pretty advanced measurements, so I hope you have your smarticles on. I promise I'll walk you through every step of the way, but if you're uncomfortable with measuring, you may want to just do a practice run or just observe and watch first and then try it for yourself. So for paper A, I'm going to just double check my grain direction by holding the paper by its edge. And according to the image in my instruction, there's an arrow pointing from the left to the right on that diagram. So I just want to make sure that this paper dips easily left to right versus this way. It's very stiff, dipping easily left to right when I put it in the score pal. Now here's just another weird step, but to create a maze book out of this paper, we can really help ourselves have an easier time by doing something special. So I'm going to score at 3 inches. And again at 9 inches. And I'm going to flip the paper bottom to top and score at 6. Next, I'll just rotate the paper 1 turn and I'll score at 4 and 8. So those are all the score lines required to make this little maze book. I'm going to repeat the same thing. So I'll check grain direction, make sure it dips easily left to right, score at 3, score at 9, flip bottom to top and score at 6, then rotate, score at 4 and 8. I'll swap up my score pal for a trimmer. Next, I'll cut my prints, and I think I can just trim both of these at the same time. I'm going to turn these into panels for the inside and the outside cover of my maze book. So I'll cut at 11 on my first cut. Grain direction doesn't matter. And then I'm going to rotate and trim at 11 1/4, 7 1/2, and 3 3/4. All right, and then rotate this 3 3/4 inch strip and cut at 8 1/4, 5 1/2, and 2 3/4. So you just made a bunch of 2 3/4 by 3 3/4 inch panels. Then there's another pair of that same size strip. I'll grab 2 of those. And we're going to repeat that last batch. So 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 2 3/4. Stack all those up. They should all be the same size. We're just basically making a bunch of rectangles. And there's one more set. Grab these. Same thing, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 2 3/4. Wow, we've got a whole bunch of really cool printed panels to decorate our covers, the insides of 2 maze books and the 2 matchboxes. And then we do have a couple of scraps to set aside. So it's a really fun way to use a page kit. You know, both prints, there are always 2 prints in a page kit, so you can use one of each and still have enough left over to make an additional project. Next, I'm going to trim this dark blue, which will grow up to become the tray of our matchboxes, and also several additional slightly larger panels than the ones we just created. And that's what gives us this sort of weird measurement. And just hang in there with me. Our first cut is at 10 7/8. Now that measurement is really close to 11. So a 10 7/8 lands halfway between 10 3/4 and 11. So right there, the medium sized line between the 2 larger hash marks on the trimmer is 10 7/8. You can do it. 10 7/8, halfway between 10 3/4 and 11. So you should almost see 11 there. Then a nice easy one for you, 7. Then rotate and cut at 6. I'm going to set these 2 pieces aside to be scored and become the tray, both trays. And now we have this long strip. We have some weird measurements here. Just bear with me, okay? It's not too bad. The first cut is easy at 11 1/2. And then 8 5/8. So you go to 8 1/2, go to the left to the medium size hash mark. So the teeny teenies those are the 16ths. The medium size are the 1/8ths, and the largest are the quarters. So I'm going to go to 8 5/8, halfway between 8 1/2 and 8 3/4. And then 5 3/4, and 2 7/8. So once again, 2 7/8 is halfway between 2 3/4 and 3. Medium size mark there. If everything went according to plan, all of these will be the same size. If it didn't, it's not a huge loss, not a big deal. But what's nice about these is they perfectly matte with the other pieces and gives it a nice frame. It'll look fabulous in your maze book, or maybe even on the outside cover, however you decide to use those. And from that, you will find 2 really, one strip and one little scrap. You can set those aside and, you know, hang on to. Maybe you want to use those to mat something. All right, now we're moving on to paper D, in this case, the manila. That's from the Vintage Americana collection, and I want it to dip easily left to right. And this is going to grow up to become 2 covers and a bunch of additional mats. So I'll cut at 10 1/2. And 6 5/8. So find 6 1/2, go to the left to the halfway between 6 1/2 and 6 3/4. That is 6 5/8. Now rotate, and we'll cut at 11 3/4, 8, and 4. Set aside these 2 pieces to be scored. This will trim this rectangle horizontally at 5 1/2 and 2 3/4. These 2 pieces can go in the pile with the prints. They should be the same size. You're getting a really nice stack here of nestables. Got a little scrap and a couple of other little scraps too. I can just grab those. This is that larger 1 1/2 inch piece, and then the skinny guy. Okay, This strip now will trim at, again, just some odd measurements, but I think you're getting the hang of the 5/8, the 3/8, hopefully. So our first cut is at 11 and a half, 8 and 5/8, 5 and 3/4, 2 and 7/8. So again, that's halfway between 2 and 3/4 and 3. These should have created, again, some larger mats that will go with the other ones you trimmed earlier, the smaller stack of mats, but they're larger in size. Next, I'll grab a sheet of the folding board. And this is, I mean, I wish I could just, I mean, can you hear how heavy this is? It's really nice, and it's a wonderful quality of material, made in the United States. So I want to make sure it dips easily top to bottom. That's really important because you definitely don't want to be fighting a grain direction with this stuff because it's so heavy. Your Fiskars guillotine will take care of this for trimming, no problem. And our first cut will happen at 11 and a quarter. This is where everyone's a little more nervous, and that's why I put it last, because you're all warmed up now. Next, and this is going to get weirder and weirder. All right, let's do 8 and 3/8. So 8, that's 8 and 1/8, 8 and a quarter, 8 and 3/8. There we go. Stabilize. It's really important. Then, please don't shoot the messenger. The next one is 4 and 3/16. Okay, so here's how we find that. You find 4 and 1/8. Okay, then the tiniest hash mark to the left of it is 3/16. So basically every hash mark, if you counted all of them from 1 inch to the next, there's going to be a total of 16. That's 1, 2, 3 will be 3/16. Should have created 2 pieces the same size, and I did. Okay, so now I'm going to take just one of these and I'm going to cut a bunch of 1/2 inch pieces, and then also a 9 inch piece in order to use for the sleeve of our book. So again, that's this part. Just bear with me on these tiny 1/2 inch pieces. So we're going to cut every 1/2 inch till we get to 9. That's 11 and a half, 11, 10 and a half, 10, 9 and a half, and 9. Set this aside to be scored. We'll repeat the same thing for the next piece of the same size. So 10 and 11 and a half, 11, 10 and a half, 10, 9 and a half, and 9. Set this aside to be scored. Now, what about all these annoying little 1/2 inch pieces? Well, provided we remember to install them, what I'm going to be using them for is some sidewall stabilizers. So in the base of your box, your tray itself is, you know, going to have some weak points on these longer walls, on this short wall here. And so I'm reinforcing them inside with a piece of the folding board. And the same is true for the spine of your cover. We can add a piece of folding board there to make sure your spine is really nice and durable. And that's one of the great ways you can use the folding board as just a reinforcement. Now we still have this longer piece. This should be 2 7/8 by 12. I'm going to cut this horizontally, and you know, this is all optional, but I kind of like it as a decorative option. All right, cut it at 11 and 5/8, 7 and 3/4, and 3 and 7/8. This created a set of 3 2 7/8 by 3 7/8, and those are going to coincide with the set of larger pieces. So all of these are nice nestables with the smaller ones that we also created, and it's going to give you a nice 1/16 of an inch reveal on those. It's going to be beautiful. So I just have 2 piles of mats, the one with all the prints and then the extras, and then another pile with the larger mats. Phew. Okay, I'm going to get rid of my trimmer and grab my score pile one more time. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you do have the option to change your settings to view this at a lower speed. So press on the gear in the lower right corner of your screen, and then when you see speed, you can change it to like 0.75 or even 0.5 to slow me way down. So maybe if you'd like to try to keep up a little bit more without pressing pause so frequently. Of course, press pause liberally either way. Now the folding board, we're going to score this, and this is a little bit more of a challenging piece to score because it's so heavy. If you're using the hammered copper or the brushed stainless steel, I want you to put this on the board with the unfinished side facing up. So, copper side down, stainless steel side down. In this case, it's the same on both sides, and we'll score the following: 2, and make a couple of passes if you like, then 2 3/4. And I'm going to show you a little tip, okay? I have a small mini size grid ruler, and sometimes with this folding board it can be a little bit harder to keep on track. So you can use your grid ruler of any size really as a support to help guide your bone folder or your stylus tool, whatever you're using, along the channel more accurately. Then I'm going to go over to 6. So just put that ruler kind of right to the left of that channel so that it stays engaged. I'll make 3 passes, and then 6 3/4. All right, those are the scores needed for the sleeve, and then because if you're making 1, why not make 2? So we'll go again and score it 2, 2 3/4, 6, and 6 3/4. Okay, we got really nice sleeves that are going to happen here now. Next, let's score our covers. These measure currently 4 by 6 5/8. So simply score it 3 and 3 5/8. Repeat for the second one. Again, that's 3. This is on the horizontal, and 3 5/8. Remember that 5/8 is halfway between the half and the 3/4. Okay, those are ready. Now our trays. These will be scored at 5/8 and 1 3/8 from each edge. So again, I apologize for all the eighths, but 5/8 is halfway between a half and 3/4. Oops. And 1 3/8, which is halfway between 1 1/4 and 1 1/2. So 5/8, 1 3/8. Just keep rotating. 5/8, 1 3/8, and rotate one more time. 5/8, 1 3/8, and then go ahead and do the second one at the same measurements. Now it's time to start assembling our books and the Matchbox and sleeve. So one of the options that you have with the book itself is you can use either a craft knife and cutting mat or scissors for this next step. So I'll show you each way once with each cover. So if you study this and you place the scored piece in front of you with the 3 columns positioned vertically, what we're going to do is cut from this first intersecting score line all the way to the bottom, and we're going to turn it over and do the same thing. So just bear with me here. I'm going to take my grid ruler and try to place it right along that score line. This is from here to here is 4 inches, and so I'm going to buddy up 2 rulers side by side to get steal an inch from this ruler, and then I have 3 inches on this ruler, and that helps me ensure that my ruler is on here nice and straight. Actually, I think I'm going to go from this top edge, and I'm going to stop when I reach this intersecting score line. So there's 1 2 3 intersecting. So just firmly with the craft knife, cut until I reach the last horizontal score right there. Then I'm going to rotate my paper and do the exact same thing, going from this top edge down to that intersecting score. So I'm going to buddy up my 2 rulers to make sure that I'm at 4 inches. This one is 3 inches wide, and here I'm at 1 inch. Nice and level and even. I'll start at the top and stop when I reach. So when you're done, by entering from one edge and stopping here, the opposite edge and stopping there, we have this funny little zigzag shape, and that's what creates our maze book. Now, if you've been doing classes with me along the way, you'll notice my desire to have you bury the bump of the score line. So this is the indentation of the score is here, and the bump of the score is here. So I'm going to go ahead and fold to bury that bump inside my crease. And then now this is not a bump, it's an indentation. So now I'm going to fold the other way and bury that crease. Oh, looks like I fold the other way again. You get the idea. Here's a bump. I'll bury it. Just go along, accordion folding, and incredibly, every fold, every score you made cooperates with the direction of the fold we want to make, thus making this beautiful maze book. Okay? Now, the alternative way, if you don't like using a craft knife, is to simply use scissors. I like to turn the paper so the bumps are facing me. It's a little bit easier to see the cut. And I'm going to start at the bottom and stop when I reach the last intersecting score line. So there's one. Just try to follow along as neatly as you can. I'm using scissors with a longer blade, and I stop right there. Then I'll rotate. I'm going to come in from the bottom edge again here. Try to stay right in the middle of that score line. Now split the difference as accurately as you can. I'm just not quite as happy with my scissor cuts as I am with my craft knife cuts, but you end up with the same exact ziggy-zaggy. And then you'll want to just choose an end, any old end, and bury that bump, which is right here. So I'm going to bury that, fold back. You're just basically accordion folding again. And if you scored well, that little flip really helps. If you're cooperating with the grain direction, look how easily that whole accordion is made. And then, you can actually just line it up nicely before you really burnish those folds with either a bone fold or just your fingertips. You can make nice crisp folds if you like. Now what you'll notice is that there are two turns the maze makes that don't cooperate with the actual direction of what a book would do. So what I want you to do is glue these pieces back to back. I'll just use my favorite ATG to secure those. So now just try to open it like a book, and there's going to be one page that doesn't quite do it right. So I'll add adhesive there and tuck that away for good. There, and now my book opens like normal pages would. I'm going to repeat that with the second maze. As long as we're at it, might as well, it's this one here that opens to the side. You want to get rid of that. Okay, now that the two maze books are done, we can take our book covers and place them in front of us. And this would be the part where you can add a reinforcement. And you'll notice right away that these reinforcements that we trimmed are just too long. I'm just going to eyeball the length, believe it or not. I know some of you who know me well, they're like, whoa, you're eyeballing this? I'll just add some bookbinding glue to the piece and then place it inside the book cover. It's going to give me an extra sturdy spine on this little book, so it just can't be crushed quite as easily. Notice the bumps of the scores are facing up because I want this to end up on the inside of my book. And just fold on those score lines, just enough to, just to make the book. At this point, you can use a liquid or a dry glue. Now, I'm using a liquid glue, and you might wonder, like, why are you using liquid here and dry there? Well, when I use liquid glue, I like to have a little bit of time to make tiny adjustments rather than just have it a one and done. If I place it and it's not quite right, I can't adjust it like I am now. So I'm just attaching the one side of the book to the back page or whichever front page of the book cover. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'll just apply my glue. I need to refill this. Okay, and then I still have a lot of flexibility here to just match it up on the other side. You can burnish. And there's my little book. So you'll repeat the same thing to install the other cover onto the book. And now I've got a second cover. So let me just show you what I mean here. Like here is one of those larger mats that we trimmed from the dark blue, and then I could add a printed mat on top and then decorate this as the outside cover. And then you have enough, you can also do the same type of thing, maybe with a different print for the other cover. So however you want to do this, you just have tons of decorating potential by using all the mats that we created earlier. Now we need to make the tray and the sleeve to hold these adorable maze books. When I'm working with the tray paper, I usually work with the bumps of the scores facing up, and it just helps me see a little bit better. So the first thing I like to do is just study the diagram here. What we're going to be doing is removing these outer corners at like a wide angle, and then also adding some darts to the second score line on each set. And I find it most helpful to always hold the tray in a vertical position. So this is the longest edge, always hold it vertically. And I'll start by adding the 2 darts on the innermost pair of score lines. So a dart is just basically a skinny V that ends at the second intersecting score on the innermost score lines. So there's my 2 little darts. I'm going to rotate 180 degrees and add the same darts on the opposing side. And that's why I always work vertically, because if you start adding darts over here, it doesn't always give you the result you want. And maybe the advantage of having 2 pieces to work with is that if one goes haywire, you still have one that will work. Okay, then I'm going to remove this outside corner. And if you want, sometimes you might find it helpful even to just use a pencil to note where your cut lines will be, and then you want this piece to go away. So I'll cut at an angle toward the intersecting score line and at an angle toward that same corner to remove this at sort of a wide angle. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposing side. Come in from the side here to remove this corner. And then I'll rotate so it's facing the other direction. Angle up, cut from the side, boom, that's gone. Angle up toward the corner, cut from the side again, and now that's gone. Now by doing that, we've effectively created a long wall flap, short wall flap, and 4 tabs. And notice how the tabs point up and down. They don't point to the side. So you'll know you're successful if you have those things, the tabs pointing up and down, long wall and short walls. Next is a really good time to add our side wall supports. So the longer ones should be good to go on the long walls of our box. So I'll just glue those into place. I have in my diagram, I have them on the flap itself, but this will work too on the sides. I'm going to put them closer to the score line. And because I want to have a spot to add a handle, when I add the short wall supports, I'm going to do them on the outside flaps. So let's trim that to fit with my scissors. Doesn't have to be perfect, just enough to give that inner support and strength to this piece. Just adding a lot of strength. And again, this is on the bump side, the bumpy side of our tray. Next, I'm going to make a note of where the center of this is. And this collection came with some really, really cute buttons. These little flag buttons. I'm going to go ahead and use them as the drawer pull, basically. So I think I'm going to add 2 holes. I'm going to put them in the center sort of this piece right here. So let me just get that centered up with my grid ruler. So handy. And my center is right about here. So I'm going to give myself a hole on either side of center. And if you have like a little mouse pad or something that you can use and it's something to pierce with, it could even be like a thumbtack or something, just to give me 2 stitching holes for the button. This kit also came with some natural colored jute. So if you wanted to, you could also thread that onto a needle or just try to get it through without a needle, but a needle really helps the situation. So I'm going to sew this button to the outside or the right side of this tray. And the reason I'm doing this now is because then we can hide everything about this. We can hide the little tails or the loop of the ribbon. If you forget to do it now and you want to add it later, it's not a big deal. But I just do like to have that finished edge on the inside of the tray as well as the outside. So I'm just going to trim the tails there. You can attach the drawer pull however you want. And a charm would work. You can get really creative here. Okay, then next step is easy. We're going to take these long side flaps and fold them over onto themselves. And so all I'm going to do is just add some adhesive to those outer flaps and put them back. So just stick it onto itself. Okay, then I'm going to bring up these little tabs at a 90-degree angle, and you'll also want to, like, I guess, prepare to fold in these next pieces. So bring up those little tabs, go in, and then this piece will go up, around, and over to make the short wall. So in order for that to stay, I need to apply adhesive, which I'll just do right on top of that folding board. Okay, so tabs go in and the short wall goes up and around, and then just try to make sure your sides are nice and straight. Nice. Then rotate. I'll apply adhesive. See that button is kind of in the way of everything, but the inside of this is going to look so much nicer. So just go up around the tabs and down back into the box to finish that off. Isn't that professional looking and nice? I just love it. Okay, then the folding board. Of course, you repeat that to make the second tray, which goes together the same way as this one. And I'm always harping about this indentation of the score being on the outside of the bump being on the inside. But what I found with folding board is the opposite is best. So we're just bucking everything we've learned. Keep the bump of the score on the right side of the project, especially for that hammered copper and brushed stainless steel. I just find that it cooperates a little better. It gives me a nicer, cleaner edge if the bump of the score is on the outside of these folds. And the only reason I know that is because I've done it and discovered that that's the case. So just keep that in mind when you're working with the folding board. So here's our little sleeve, right? And it's nice and stiff and solid. And the best way I found to attach the sleeve, get the sleeve correctly sized for the box, is just to temporarily put it on the box. And I'm going to apply some adhesive here. And I also like to apply a little bit of adhesive to the edge of this flap on the front because there is an overlap there and I want adhesive on both sides. So here, this is adhesive on the top edge. Here I have it on the bottom edge. And just wrap it around and position it so that it's tight but not impossible to move. And now you have this adorable, functional Matchbox. How cool is that? Next, once decorated, you can take the entire little maze book, put it inside the tray, add it to the sleeve, decorate the sleeve, and again, that's what all of these pieces are for. So you could take like this darker blue and again add an element to the front and then go ahead and embellish with all of the elements from the cut-aparts in this collection. So I'm going to take a little break from the camera and just have some fun gilding this lily, and I'll come back with my finished Vintage Americana boxes and then review the others we made as well. Well, fast forward an hour or two, and here I am with the completed maze books and matchboxes using the Vintage Americana collection. And I love how I was able to incorporate the adorable rooster charm that was included in the page kit, along with the round cut-aparts to kind of add this, good morning sunshine. I absolutely love the look of the front covers. And then on the inside, just as a note, when we trimmed our folding board, we were able to get 3 bonus pieces out of the board. So I used one behind the print on the back cover, one on the front cover of one book, and then one on the front cover of the other book. So I was able to use all 3 of those folding board pieces as stabilizers. This is a really nice, sturdy front cover, that's for sure. So basically what I ended up doing was taking all of the cut aparts, trimming them into their normal sizes, and then retrofitting them to decorate the cover. You can see the strips. They used to be 12 inches long. Now I just trimmed them down, trimmed all of these out to decorate the cover. And you can see just the little border strips are used, just a portion. And even this was a larger oval embellishment, and I just trimmed out the words. And I use for this a really nice sharp craft knife, my mini grid ruler, which is around here somewhere. Yes, my mini grid ruler comes in really handy, the craft knife, and then the Club Scrap cutting mat to separate these into pieces, ink the edges to warm them a little bit, and it really adds a lot. So all I had to do, this was even retrofitted to fit here. These as well. This was from a long border strip. I just trimmed them into 2 sections, rounded the corners, and added them to a page. Very well decorated, well appointed. And again, here's the other one, just to give you a little tour. Added just whatever could fit, and if it didn't, I kind of did what I had to do to make it fit, and I love the outcome. All of these books are so precious, and whether you're using the Vintage Americana kit, the Coffee House collection, the Beautiful Noise collection, or the Gone Wild remix, or whatever kit you may have on hand at home. I know that a lot of you have a lot of collections laying around. So this project is just a great way to incorporate what you have or what you see here into some wonderful gifts in plenty of time for the gift giving season. So I'll see you for our next project. Thanks for joining me.